Content over everything.
That's how I see that one. You see? So I think what we need to look at, and that's why I wanted to talk about this at some point, the history of that area. As to why it's a delicate. Huh?
We finish on.
Is that the rose one? Yeah?
There's nowhere.
The rose thing.
Yeah.
I got one there recently as well. They're good, you know. Still.
Yeah, Sam Queen.
No content. What I was.
I don't know how it's gonna work here.
What Ethiopia needs to do is give back the stolen land they stole from Eritrea and Somalia. That's what they
Well, they've given back Eritrea. What the choice was taken. They didn't give it back. They had no choice.
the Eritreans took it by force.
Yeah, well, I know the history of that too. Now, because as I said to you, I was very close to the leader of the EPLF in this country. I used to go to his house. EPLF, the Eritrean People Liberation Front. I was very close to the leader. So the leader in this country, his name was Haile Mercurius. I knew him very well. So when you're young, when I'm your age, I was doing a lot of the work. I was doing a lot of the work on the ground in Africa, so I saw a lot of things. You know, I saw Operation Moses when they were taking Jews from Gaddafi. The Israelis were taking falashas from Gondar.
During the Mary regime.
That is Nimeri regime. Yes, that's right, 1984, 1985. Right, all that
was in Sudan.
Yeah, Jafar Nimeri, head of state.
What they are calling Israel, those people, this generation, they are called Ashkenazi.
Say again?
They call Ashkenazi in Israel now.
Ashkenazi. Well, they are the white European descendants. The ones who, look, my view of this, right now they're telling the rest of Jews from Gondar that they are not allowed to come into Ethiopia, to Israel, right? Sometimes I'm speaking without notes, I make mistakes like that, like what I just did. So people correct me. Yeah, but yeah, look, they got guys with guns bigger than them. I saw it when I went to Israel. I saw Israelis who can't yet speak Hebrew with guns taller than their persons, standing on the front line, going down in areas to fight with Palestinians. They did that to them. Another thing I heard, and I can't authenticate it, is that we're sterilizing the Ethiopian Jewish women in Israel.
This was for years.
Yes. This is something, just that I didn't have the right notes in front of me. But now they're telling them, the remainder of them, that they can't come back, while any Russian refusenik can just walk in. And you have people like Natan Sharansky, who inside 2 years assumed a position of power in Israel. He hadn't been 2 years coming from that perestroika period when Gorbachev allowed the Jews to leave Russia. This guy called Natan Sharansky, he rocked up and he all of a sudden was large in the land. And they're telling black Jews. Now my point about this whole situation here is Ethiopia does have that connection with ancient Israel. Hear what I'm saying? I'm not saying the Zionist state of Israel. But because there's one elides into the other, you can't escape an emotional connection that exists between the state of Israel and Ethiopia. And I'll tell you another thing about Protestant Christianity. Unlike the established churches, like the Catholic Church, which has a strong anti-Semitic animus, the Protestants have a weird cognitive dissonance when it comes to the Jews. On the one hand, since they are literalists, they believe, yes, the Jews are a condemned people. But because they are also literalists in the Revelation, they believe when the Jews return to Zion, they will become an elevated people. So as it stands in history today, Protestants love Jews. They love the state of Israel. When they go there as pilgrims, they actually point their fingers at Arab Christians and laugh at them and say, you're not even Christian. You all are Arabs. These are people in Nazareth and Bethlehem, who have been the first Christians on earth, arguably, living in Bethlehem and Nazareth. And these Protestants from Alabama go there and tell the people they're not real Christians. And they're bigging up the Jews. They're watching these Jews, oppressing these people and saying, you see, the Bible said it's part of God's plan. They have returned to Zion. Now, why I'm saying all this, Abiy Ahmed is a Protestant. Abiy Ahmed is a Protestant. He himself is a Protestant.
His dad is a Muslim.
Matters not.
He's a Protestant.
He is a Protestant.
He's a Protestant, but his dad is a Muslim.
So what we've got here is a person who would be kindly disposed to Zionist involvement. All that lovely Blue Nile water, the Omo River, the Awasha River, all that lovely water, that lovely fertile land in Ethiopia. How much fresh water does Israel have left? The Jordan Sea is polluted. The Jordan River is polluted. The Sea of Galilee. Israel needs water. Ethiopia has it in abundance. The Renaissance them, I see Israel putting a lot of investment into Ethiopia. I see it happening. Ethiopia, I'm telling them a lot of foolishness about Menelik and Sheba to keep them sweet. Yeah, because they went to... See what happens when I'm talking off the cuff, right? And they did the same thing in Igbo land. They went there and made the people think they're Jews. That place is full of oil. Wherever they go, my problem with people...
They might put you for that one.
Sir?
They might put you for that one.
No, I've done that to death. The Hebrews are not, the black Hebrews are there. We did that to death. Because the ones in America tell them they're not even Hebrews. Them TPS, what do you call it? Yeah, they tell them they're not even Hebrews. But my point about this is, I know telling black people that they are Hebraic has an agenda. It's about money. I want your oil. I want your... Look at all those rivers state, all those fresh rivers in Nigeria, right? Fertile land. Igbo land is rich.
The longest river in the world.
Well, the Nile one, yeah. Well, the Blue Nile is there. I know that there is a... So you're taking us... I like what you did there. You brought me back on the subject. And that's a good thing to do. Because, I'll stay out there. So I think... If you understand the history of Ethiopia is one where, as I said the last time, the historian Edward Gibbon says, encompassed by her enemies on all sides, the Ethiopians slept for 1,000 years, forgetful of the world, by whom they were forgotten. Right? That determined, those high mountains, and I know sometimes you don't like me to say this, writing, literacy, right? When the people know who they are, because I can point to a book called the Kebarnagast and say, I descend from kings, not only, how does that, the Marks and Spencer advert go? Not just any king, King Solomon. I descend from the wisest king on earth. Of course, how Ahmad Gurai going to defeat somebody like that? I'm being troublesome now. How they going to defeat people like that? Them know themselves.
Ask yourself why they eat kids.
It's the mountains as well. Let me tell you, the Somali, the Kushites as we call them, they did not understand mountain warfare. Those people knew the Ethiopians knew their mountains. They didn't know mountain warfare.
I have to get a couple of my uncles to debate you about that.
Mountain warfare? Listen, the Ethiopians understood how, listen, they knew the land. They ambushed people. You guys are flatland. No, you're a flatlander. They're flatlanders. You're a flatlander.
See, the mountains, the lands.
Don't play with them, Abyssinians. Don't play with them.
London, the roads. Come on,
You get me?
But I know this. No, listen. They burned down the whole Ethiopia. He's right. They burned down the place.
They're bad. Bad can't.
Listen, I think it was the intervention. It was the intervention of the Portuguese. What? No, hold on. Khaled, listen to this. Khaled, listen to this. No, let's get back to this. It was the intervention of the Portuguese.
Nah, but it's real life though.
It's
real life. And that was a Hollywood movie. Charlie, don't be
Somalia is the only African nation to completely defeat a modern day US army.
Yeah.
Fact.
Yep.
We made man.
Look, they burned down the whole of Ethiopia to Aksum. It's the Portuguese intervention. Let me just say this for the camera. The Portuguese intervention that actually stopped the Cushitic advance throughout. They reached as far as Aksum, and they were going to take the whole country, and then Ahmad Gurai was killed. That's what stopped it. So really, them guys, I used to back up, they don't eat nice. I know this, right? But I am
Ask
intrigued.
yourself why they eat raw meat. You know why?
Well,
Because when they used to see the enemy coming, with the smoke, you know when you cook your
oh, that what it was? That reason? Because I know royal kings love to eat it.
No, yeah. When they
Kings
eat-
consider it to be their
when
thing,
they
you know?
eat kid food, the smoke and that, the enemy will see them. When the enemy will see them, they think
I
okay,
see. But anyway, the point is, I am interested in that history, and we need to understand the situation today. We need to get a grasp of that history. To be serious for a moment, yes, it's the rugged terrain, but it's people who know themselves, who have a sense of their place in history, and that's what the Abyssinians or the Ethiopians had, and that's why they were able to say, look. Whereas in West Africa, you come to a people and you have literacy, and they'll say, oh, this is a very good thing. and we'll take your religion with it. In Ethiopia, they had literacy. The Muslims really didn't have anything to give them, and that is the truth. They had nothing really to offer them that they didn't have. And that is why I think of all, because a girl last time I was doing my talk, the girl who stood behind me, she was waiting to interrupt. And then when she did interrupt, because she kept talking until I allowed her to interrupt, she said, the reason Ethiopia remained the only unconquered African country was because of Christianity. And I said to her, yes, because I didn't want to keep talking to her. But I wanted to expand on it and talk about the importance of technology. And I was saying to Brother Young Bandaka, we're in the Anthropocene era. I keep using this word Anthropocene, where technology, we have all this technology, and we have enough as Africans to learn it. I am the most computer illiterate person on earth, so I should be speaking to myself first. But we need to be on top of technology. If we look at history, and as I said, Chancellor Williams said, history is there to teach us where we went wrong and how to correct it. Even the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the same thing. He said, our people cannot be better served by any other discipline than the discipline of history. Because we are a people who have been removed from, speaking about blacks in the diaspora, we have been removed from our history. Whereas some people, some nations may have too much history, and I can explain that if you want me to, we have too little. And that's why when people write beautiful statements like, history only keeps ancient enmities on boil, it's only conquerors saying that they're scared that you're going to conquer them. The people who write that, I understand what they're saying. Like, you know, people who deride the study of history, saying things like, oh, history is only a way of fomenting nationalisms and keeping ancient enmities on boil. Yes, if I am in a position of privilege and I don't want that threatened, I would say that. Because I want the people who I have culturally lobotomized to remain empty. So I can only put in there which renders them tractable. Whatever I want to put in the mind of the colonized is whatever will make him obedient to me. And that's what they do with us. So that's why I say not every nation is the same. And that's why I always say Africa is a culture of cultures. And that's why I always say when we look at Africa, we have to sometimes go for the nuance. We've got to go deeper than the generalizations. They work, but we've got to go and say, look, some cultures have too much history and some have too little. And we cannot apply a one-size-fits-all. Like I was talking earlier about the short people. People are going to get upset that I didn't say, because I didn't say vertically challenged, they're going to get upset. So the Twa. But then you see they call them the Baka in the Cameroon. So I want to name that in combat. We have wiped these people out in Africa. As Pan-Africanists, we have to be concerned. People are going to say it's only a handful, let them die. How is that being Pan-Africanist? The short people are being pushed right to extinction. They're on the verge of extinction because the area where they live in the forest is being either multinational corporations, deforestation, and war. The Interahamwe, some of the RPF in Rwanda are still out chasing the Interahamwe through the forest. This is from the Rwandese genocide. They're about 4 feet tall, a tall one is 4 foot tall. But people, in history they call them pygmies, but we don't want to use those kind of words. They call them that. But what I'm saying is, as Pan-Africanists, we have to be cognizant of all the struggles in Africa. We have to. And we can't apply one way of, because if a man is a socialist, we're going to want to apply a socialist perspective to every struggle he sees in Africa. Every single one.
So why, you know when the Black Lives Matter people, when they talk, how come they don't involve East African struggle?
You know what, I had a talk about this the other day recently when, I think you might be blocking the camera, I think so.
I watch videos,
No, I tell you what, I tell you what, I've often found this very funny, that whenever there's a Pan-African event, that East African culture, you hardly see people, okay, let me be a little bit ridiculous, you hardly see people dressed like Maasai, or you hardly see people, maybe Southern Africa, you see some headdress from girls and some cloaks from Southern Africa, but generally, you don't see much culture.
There's a reason for that, though.
From the East.
What's the reason?
Yeah.
What's the reason for that? Well, I disagree to a certain degree. Firstly, because linguistically, I'd argue that Swahili is the most.
But took a back seat after the problem with Maulana Karenga. After he got, it kind of started taking a back seat.
No, but I'm saying linguistically though, like if you look at like the most common language among Pan-Africans, I'd say is Swahili.
Not say I want to contest that.
Yeah.
I think since the problems between
I'm saying still, we know why.
Swahili began to be.
Yeah, no, but I hear you. But for example, the celebration of Kwanzaa is still growing. If that makes sense.
Kwanzaa is contentious for a lot of people.
It is. No, it is. It is. But I'm saying that it's still celebrated.
It's there.
So like there was a time when like Swahili names and Yoruba names were the most common. Yeah, names. I'm saying, a lot of people take on.
Yeah.
So I'm saying I wouldn't say that. I would say that it depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at clothes, definitely West Africa. But then I'd say that clothes-wise, the garments of West Africa, like you find people in South Africa that wear garments from West Africa. That's what I'm saying.
It's slow to develop because I spend a lot of time in West Africa.
Because I investigated this one time as well, and the answer that I got was, as far as textiles industry and the globalization of textiles industry, West African textiles, the industry grew differently to the rest of the continent, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So if you were to ask, like, you can identify textiles, from West Africa, like the Ashomke, the Kente,
Adire.
Adire, you know what I'm saying? These kinds of things, Like, whereas most people wouldn't be able to do that.
Bogola, Mali.
Right, you know what I'm saying? So these textiles became more popular worldwide. I'd say, again, like I said, the Swahili language was more like the expression. You know what I'm saying?
I feel that was more when in my youth.
But
I think it's not like that anymore with Swahili.
You may be correct, but what I'm saying is that dynamic has existed. So I wouldn't say that East Africa is not present. I'll just say that it depends on what you're looking at. You know what I'm saying? Because
I know.
Not mentioned, bro.
Who's we? Somalia or East Africa? That's what I'm saying.
No, we're talking
that's
about
incorrect.
East Africa at the
That's
moment.
incorrect. For example, one of the most, you would know, at the time, one of the most celebrated man was Samora Machel from Mozambique. That's East Africa. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, Nyerere before him. Nyerere.
But again, the man them don't like Haile Selassie, but when it comes to outside Africa and the Pan-Africanism, he's one of the most celebrated guys.
Very symbolic.
Symbolic. He's speaking one of, so I'm saying, and Ethiopia as a nation, outside of Selassie, Battle of Adwa, you know what I'm saying? These are significant points for Pan-Africanists. So I can't make that claim that East Africa is not mentioned, because the only language that most people have agreed, I say most people have agreed, but that has got some level of agreement in terms of being a Pan-African language, is an East African language. No West African language, South African language. It's the only language, right, that has gotten a significant level of approval. You know what I'm saying?
Maybe big population.
Not anybody. More Rastafari movement only.
Mostly Rastafari, but I'm saying you find there are races that were in Jamaica in the 70s teaching Amharic. They weren't teaching no West African languages, even though most of them have West African lineage. You know what I'm saying? So I'm saying, so I wouldn't say that. I'd say that it depends on what you're looking at.
From the 60s in Trinidad, there was a branch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church established, where our priest was called Abba Gebre Selassie. We had a priest, and members of the Rastafari movement, by degrees, slowly became Ethiopian Orthodox. So we have a church.
It just depends, innit?
Yeah.
So I'm saying definitely clothes-wise. Like over here, most of the people that were wearing traditional garments, it was West African.
With drums and so on too.
All that kind of
drums
stuff.
And
right, you know what I'm saying? You find
cultural artifacts.
We
do our traditional garments.
I'm not saying that you don't. I'm saying that in terms of the Pan-African diaspora, most of us were wearing, like, we got our garments from West Africa. So, you know what I'm saying? And I think that is because West Africa had a global textiles industry. Right? Right? And over here, like for me, like my dad used to get our garments from a sister, mama called Mama Graceby, You know Gina Yashari, the comedian? Right? Her mother used to own a garments, like, clothes shop in Hackney. So a lot of my garments were just default Nigerian because we buy them from Nigerians. You see what I'm saying?
But there's more. The Pan-African movement, a lot of the Pan-African movement actually started not even in West Africa, but in the diaspora. So, and the diaspora connects almost racially to West Africa. So I think that's why West Africa was so profiled. Well, Congo's more. We know numerically there are more Congolese.
Is there such a unified African clothing?
I wouldn't say there is, but there is, and isn't in West Africa. Amongst a lot of countries, you will wear the big three-piece thing, which is the shirt, the trousers, and the big cloak. I don't want to give it a name, about 10 different names.
It's a Nigerian thing, isn't it?
No, it's not.
It's Nigerian.
It's not. You will get it in about 10 countries, at least.
But I say the weaving tradition as well. So like among the Akanis, Kente, Then among the Yoruba is Ashoke, and you have other weaving traditions that you find like the Ewe have Kente as well. In fact, some people say that the Ashanti got it from the Ewe. That's a beef though. I know. That's a beef. Yeah. It's beef. Right? But the point is that
the Congolese are their bark cloth.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
So how come, you see when Black Lives Matter, when they have like a march and that, how come they never march for like East Africa, like things that happen in East Africa? When there's crisis in Ethiopia, they never talk about it.
Black Lives Matter in America wasn't really marching for anything else.
No, like reparations, you mean, like on like they had the Namibia people appeared for the reparations day.
When is East Africa?
They were Namibians.
We spread awareness. What's happening in West Africa?
I don't think that's the case though.
I don't
think that's the case. I think what it is, people know about where they're from, innit? So like you get people from.
Some of them don't even see us as Africa.
Yeah, they don't recognize us as a fellow African.
Say that again?
Yeah, some of Western Africans, they do not recognize you as a
I mean, we of the diaspora.
Yeah.
We of the diaspora. I'm so sorry.
It does have to be spoken about.
We could go down it.
But the problem is, if we go down the rabbit hole, then we can stay in East, yeah, and look at who gets respect and who don't get respect, who gets looked down upon, and who gets, you know what I'm saying? We can do that too.
That's subjective.
Say again? So, bro.
Down on, I don't get that.
Right.
We don't look down each other on
That's
the East
subjective.
Coast.
It depends how you
You're chatting rubbish. And you know you're chatting rubbish.
There's a bunch of us.
Right, you know you're chatting rubbish. You're chatting rubbish. Hold on.
You just made a statement there. So I'm just saying.
Contentious Khalid.
I'm just saying, on the East Coast, we don't do that.
Let me clarify. Right? What I'm saying is, I don't think it's as simple as you can say that. He's a joker. Well, I'm going to come back to him. Right? What's it called? I don't think it's as simple as we can say that people get focused on just West Africa. I've heard this before, but don't focus on East Africa. I mean, Angola is technically central, yeah, but I'm saying that.
I think it's receded. It was the beginning, like Nyerere and Ujamaa.
Yeah,
Nyerere, but it's receded. In my time, what you're saying more applicable to when I was a young man.
No. I'm saying in London, UK, because there's a high Nigeria and Ghana population, it does look like West Africa dominates. But I'm saying if you're talking about a Pan-African context, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think you can say Pan-African is focused on West Africa and not East Africa. I don't think you can say that. I think you can say that culturally in London, because there's so many Nigerians and so many Ghanaians, it looks like when people relate to Africa, they relate more to Nigerians and Ghanaians. I was at an award show and a sister from Uganda was saying something like that. She was saying, it's good to see. She won an award, and she was saying, it's good to see that East Africa is getting as much love as West Africa. But she's not talking about in a political kind of activism Pan-African context. She's talking about London,
cultural,
and the fact that Nigeria and Ghana seem to dominate what it means to be African in London. That would make sense. But among the youngest Somalis are dominating. Among like the 16-year-olds and you know what I'm saying? There's Ghana, Nigeria, and there's Somalia now. That's what it is.
Numbers.
But I'm saying, I'm saying the youth are coming in talking Arabic to man. I'm like, why? Like, but our slang though, it's the slang in it. But they're getting it from their Somali region and sister in them, innit?
So wallahi, plenty wallahi.
All of that stuff roll on and everything there, just randomly in conversation. Yeah, stuff roll on. When you get all this Somalis, them innit. So my point is that it's an evolution of things. Cause you man came in mostly the bulk of you man came in the 90s, my G. You see, just what I'm saying. Whereas the Ghana and Nigeria been there since 80s and 70s. Jamaica been there since 60s and 50s. So the Ghanaians and Jamaicans would have said, the Ghanaians and Nigerians would have said, but why is it Jamaica? Jamaica seems to be running everything. You know what I'm saying? Even the Trinidad them and the Bajans them, when they come here, they say Jamaica just needs to dominate everything. Right, you know what I'm saying?
You know where my Ethiopian brothers coming from?
Yeah.
Sudan. Huh? I'm a Sudani, East Coast anyway, yeah? You know how it is, yeah?
East, yeah?
The East Coast.
Yeah.
But listen to this here, don't we just say, like, I understand where he's coming from, but like, even like when it comes to Black History Month, when it comes to a lot of representations, like, East gets a bit like, so it might be where, we might need to start embracing and start stepping up our culture as well. So there's two sides of the thing as well. Well, we might be more proud of being.
Khalid, let me give him an anecdote. In the early days of Pan-Africanism, people had a more limited perspective on how Pan-Africanism should represent itself. So rather mischievously on one occasion, I wore a jalabia and an emma and this shawl. And I went to a Pan-Africanist meeting. It wasn't the AAP. I was a member then of the AAPRP.
Is it?
But I went to a PACM meeting.
Okay.
And they're a little more hard. They play harder. They don't joke.
I'm part of the PSM lineage. Yeah.
So I went to the meeting and they stopped me at the door. And they said that this is a meeting for Africans. So I said, yeah, that's why I'm here. And they said, no, you're an Arab. So then I said to them, I'll be a little mischievous because I don't want to...
You're troublemaking.
Yeah, I want to... I was young like him. You're going to forgive me, I was young like him. So I said, listen, let me tell you something, right? This is not a thobe from Saudi Arabia. The thing I was wearing at the time. You know what the jalabia is, because you're Sudanese, right? I said, this... In fact, it was given to me by the family of Sadiq al-Mahdi. You see, I'm dropping another name on you now. Right? It was given to me because I was a personal friend of the family of Sadiq al-Mahdi. And I went there in 1985. I was in Mulazmin. I used to go to his house in Mulazmin. So they gave me the jalabia. I go to the PSCM meeting and they tell me I'm not African enough and this is an Arab. They say, you're dressed like an Arab. I said, this was developed on the continent of Africa. This is African clothes. So in their mind, yeah, this is Berber, but that wasn't the white one that they wear with the turban on top. And for them, that was not African enough. Because, look, Pan-Africanism and Afrocentricity is an evolution. It's going to grow. And the more people determine to make their presence, so instead of saying, I will never do it again, which is what I never wore it again to a meeting. But now you all got the Allah. The one that's short. Yeah, no, they have one called like Aragi Sirwal. Aragi, yeah, but it's not Aragi Sirwal, it's called Alalla. The trouser is more long. And you can put designs and so forth on that one. By the way, if you're going to Sudan, get me one. Yeah, that one now has more. Now, you see, if I say something like that one has more of an African look, I'm making the same mistake. If I say the Alalla has more of an African look than the Jalabiyah, I'm making the same mistake. Why must African be colorful? The Ethiopian clothes is all white.
That's what I'm saying. That's the question.
They're all white. No, I'm sure you are making the same mistake.
But you're making a good point because outside of clothes from the nations that are in Ghana and Nigeria, Ethiopian clothes, because of Rastafari, we're very popular over here.
Yes.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
but on top of that, what I'm trying to say is the guy was kind of feeling that because I'm wearing white, the guy, the bouncer or whatever, that I'm wearing Arab clothes. And I'm trying to tell him that this is indigenous.
People make those mistakes.
And Sheikh Anta Diop, and I'm going to drop another name again. I have a garment that belongs to Sheikh Anta Diop.
Okay.
It's a, what you call, Nyete Abdu. 3-piece but big kaftan. Now, if you don't know Africa, you're going to say, Sheikh Anta Diop used to wear Arab clothes. You're going to say that. He has a lot of embroidery down the front up to here, bigger sleeves than this, but this shape. But under this, you'll have a trouser called a chaya, very wide, and you'll have an inner shirt. Now, for a person who doesn't understand how Africa interfaced with its history, people coming in, people mixing, they wouldn't understand why Senegalese wear that. So, if you look at a lot of the clothes in East Africa, people may have this feeling. Take, for example, Zanzibar. Because now I'm pushing it to the furthest extent. You go to Zanzibar now, what they wear is no different from what they wear in Oman. Although they call it in Zanzibar the kanzu, and they call it the dasha. Yeah, but check it out. Let us assume that that's Arab clothing. It is also, here's how I'll muddy the water for you now. It is also the national dress of the Baganda. Kampala, Uganda.
People in Uganda, yeah.
The principal ethnicity of Uganda. That white dress with the little thing and the embroidery and all that the Omanis wear is also the national dress of the Baganda. So what are we going to say now? When they wear it in Zanzibar, the Arabs, or when they wear it in Kampala, the African? Because we had a Emancipation Day in Trinidad. You know, that's where we start. And I'm going to drop another name now. I was part of the organization that lobbied. I left Trinidad in '84. Emancipation Day was inaugurated in '85, the year after I left. But we, the young people, the young members of NJAC, we fought and struggled for that one. Well, I was also a member of Egbe Ilosi Wajwile Al Kibulan. There was another group and we fought for Emancipation Day. But when, not many years ago, the Ugandan delegation came, the guy was the Yoruba, they wear the what we know from West Africa. The guy from Uganda was wearing a kanzu, the white clothes. So for those who didn't know, they might, why is he dressed like an Arab? That's what they would say. But what they don't understand is, the history of how Islam arrived in Uganda. It didn't arrive in any contentious way. And just as it was about to take proper root, the British arrived, established a protectorate, and like I said before in another tape, the royal family of the Baganda have 3 religions. Because somehow the Comboni Catholic missions got in at some point. And maybe that's why the British came and established the protectorate. But you have in them royal family Protestants, CAV, Church of England, Catholic, and Muslim. You still have Muslims in the Baganda royal family. And they dress in the white. So when we're discussing African culture, there are so many ways that African culture can bleed into cultures beyond Africa. Remember we were having a discussion the other day, but not everything in Africa is African. Likewise, Africa shares, for example, a lot of what we practice in Ifa, you may even find it in Central Asia. There's a lot of similarity in the religion, the pre-Abrahamic religion of the Kyrgyz people and the Uzbek people and so forth. A lot of the carpets Muslims pray on, they got pagan symbols on them. They don't know that. A lot of the symbolism that we're going to buy these cheap carpets made in Turkey, I think we're holy because we're praying on a carpet. The carpets have got symbols from Central Asia, the original culture of the people from there. We don't know it and they've forgotten. Take the Hausa. They wear the big garment called the babariga. Somebody was asking about you were mentioning hand-stitched clothing. They painstakingly do this by hand. I have a couple of those at home. A lot of those symbols and motifs on the Hausa garments are pre-Islamic. They don't know it anymore. But they go back to a time when they had meaning for the Hausa people, or maybe a people that antedated the Hausa in North Africa. So sometimes when we get too purist about things, you strip everything bare, you dismantle everything.
That's true, yeah.
And I'm saying that I understand what I do believe with what they're saying about East Africa is East Africans need to be a little more assertive. I'm sorry. They need to be a little more assertive too about this. I do understand what he's saying, but I believe it's applicable more to my time. Ujamaa, we were all votaries of Julius Nyerere of Tanzania.
No, I'll tell you about that. The PACM, as an organisation, they developed partly because I think they were members of something called the Black Unity and Freedom Party or something like that. And they, in the 70s, forget the year, 78's in my head, but I could be wrong. Nyerere called a conference in Tanzania, and brothers and sisters went to Tanzania for the conference. And at the time, there was a split among people that were more socialist leaning and more nationalist leaning. PACM forms like the more nationalist camp. So my only argument is that I get what the brothers are saying. I'm just saying that you can't put that on, that the Pan-African political movement has always been Africa focused. And that's not to say that there's been no areas that got more shine than others, but it's never been an East-West thing. I don't think we can make that argument. You know what I'm saying?
What I think is this, like I was saying before you came, I don't even mind. I've got to the stage, I don't care if you call yourself an Afro-Arab. But it's problematic if you think it makes you better. No, let me learn. Because if you leave that hanging like that, it's bad. I got to finish, hear me out. I don't even mind if you call yourself an Afro-Arab. But that should not bear connotations of being superior to black people, to other Africans. And I think it's a tendency in my time for Sudanese to call themselves Arabs. They wouldn't even say they were Afro-Arabs. In the days of Nyerere, they just said they were Arabs. No, it's changed.
That's our point, Uncle.
He's a Sudanese man.
Before God and man, and before Islam and religious, there is a religion in Sudan called Sudanism.
Go on, say more. Yeah.
But over here,
Sudanism is central base. It's Khartoum, Jazeera, Madani.
Right.
Sudanism is Sudan center focus. It doesn't take account of the four. It doesn't take account of the Hadendua of Kassala. It doesn't take account of the Nuba from Kordofan. It doesn't take account of the Dinka and the Nuer from South Sudan.
Exclusive, yeah.
It's very center-centric. Yeah. Very middle. Not even Wadi Halfa people get a look in. The Nubians of Wadi Halfa, they don't get a look in. So I contest that. What I do believe is, when I was in Sudan in the 80s, they considered themselves Arabs. And that was the power. The power group. It just even, it was a small group of people telling them they're Arabs. I know that. But they can't speak for the entire country.
They can't.
That's what they're doing.
But because of that, because this is touching what he's saying, yeah. Over here, because I know because I was in the Pan-African community, right. So one of the most popular organisations, like in the 80s and the 90s, was the Sudanese People's Liberation Organisation, and Pan-Africanists over here.
I was a member of that
right,
too.
You know what I'm saying, we're being actively educated about what was going on in Sudan by this organisation. I can visualize. And
we had a meeting in the Santo Center not too long ago, but less than a year.
Yeah. But one of the most popular ones, there's a brother over here called Denga Jack. Yeah, he was a popular.
Denga Jack is my close friend. He died in 1988.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
He and I lived in the same house. 1998. Denga Jack and I. You knew Denga Jack?
Yeah, but
you want me to tell you his real name?
My house.
His real name is Muhammad Hassan Kabsoon. Wallahi, ismu فعلا Muhammad Hassan Kabsoon. Abu Sakin fi South Abbasi Abdurrahman. I used to go and know them. He and I...
He became a traditionalist now.
We met, I know. We met in the Central Mosque in London. I have a whole article written about our friendship.
Yeah.
We were friends for many years.
Nah, he knows my father very well.
That's my boy.
He's been in my house. He's actually sat down in my house.
We are the same age.
Right, yeah.
If he was living today, he'd be 58.
Yeah.
Allah yarhamu. That's my boy.
So I'm saying, but my point is that...
Why do you laugh? He married to the daughter of Ibrahim Salahi. Did you know that? He married Lisa.
He's in a museum here.
He married one of the foremost artists of the Sudan. He thinks outside the box. Ibrahim Masallahi. Then married his daughter. We were all at the wedding. Is he settled in London now? He was in Qatar. He's in London now?
I don't think so.
I know he had settled in Qatar. Anyway, Denga Jack, that's my boy, man.
Yeah, I'm saying. So my point is that has always been like East Africa has always been represented among, like, you know what I'm saying, like among the Pan-African tradition. It's never been outside of it.
Yes.
It's never been outside of it. It's just that because people are not really educated about the tradition of Pan-Africanism, politically speaking, these misconceptions can develop in that context. That's what it is. That's what I'm saying. But you know what I'm saying.
I think East Africa has to be, like, I did a discussion on Islam in West Africa, and I did one on Islam in East Africa. And what I did say is, East Africa historically, everything all right over there? East Africa historically faced the Indian Ocean. That is a little bit of the problem. The orientation of East Africa was out that way. The Somalis traded out across the Indian Ocean, right? The Swahilis traded out so they faced, in fact, you know what the Swahili called the country beyond? They call it Nika. Nika, like Tanganyika. Nika means the bush, the bush. So inside Africa was seen as a forbidding place. You had people like the Maasai that they would have had to confront if they pushed further inland. So they stuck on the coast. And I think that is one of the reasons why Nyerere himself had beef with the Swahilis. Because the Swahilis had a notion of themselves as, we are not really with these people we call the Washenzi. The word Washenzi in Swahili has a bad meaning. It's like Abid. It's Abid, yani. So the Swahili people on the coast look like you, me, him, and this one used to call the interior people.
I'm a deeply melanated African.
No, but we were. Put him under the light. Put him under the light.
I look like a South Sudanese.
Raise that cap and get a good look at that. So, I think that's part of what happened when Zanzibar was incorporated as part of the Tanganyika-Tanzania Union. It happened partly because Nyerere felt these people should be part of this union rather than stop looking to Oman. And I think a lot of these factors do interfere with the East African sense of that kind of on meetings, not profiling themselves. And they need to be a bit more assertive about their Africanity. I think the brother is wrapping us up.
No, he's trying to set up his
Well, I think it's time. I think we've done this subject.
Best to say that you want to wrap up.
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. If I'm on a roll, I'm on a roll. You're the one who get worried about me talking too much. But I will now, for the purposes of, I gotta go anyway, man. It's too dark,
Yes,
I have a problem with the vampirecy that prevails when they come out at night.
All right, we're ready.
Gentlemen, lovely. Assalamu alaikum. Lovely. Allah barik feek. Lovely to see you all. I gotta give this. I think I owe somebody something. I owe somebody something. Yeah. Listen, are we gonna do this discussion about Ethiopian Islam another time?
Sorry, bro.
Yeah.
From your
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
I think.
The man become secondary school for the schooling.
Eesa, they say one of the most dangerous phrases is that's because we've always done it this way. Just because you've done it that way doesn't
I hear that.
right.
No, it doesn't make it right. It doesn't.
This
What
is
I'm
what
saying is,
and I'm saying, and I'm willing to accept that that may be the case, you know, or things may have happened a certain way, but it doesn't mean that we always approach it with the same mentality. You know what I'm saying? So, for example, yeah, I was listening to what's his name? I forgot his first name. His brother called something Kamali anyway. He studies a lot of different African cultures, innit? And he was